So when people talk about Bitcoin, they usually, frame it as just a digital currency.
Right, digital money.
But its real power, I think, lies in the philosophy. It's a statement, really, a non-sovereign system of value that's guaranteed by physics, by energy.
A reflection of our anxiety about trust, you could say?
Exactly. But here's the tension, the thing we need to address. What if the economic engine that's supposed to uphold that security, the incentive for miners, is actually failing? Is the whole philosophy even sustainable then?
That is the ultimate existential risk. And it's not new, this vulnerability, this game theoretic problem. People have known about it for years.
It's when?
We have transcripts, papers from pioneers back in, 2010, 2015, all talking about this miner reward cliff. They knew that the core thing unifying Bitcoin's value is its commitment to energy, to proof of work. If you can't pay the security, though, the whole thing just collapses.
So our mission for this deep dive is to cut through all the noise and really focus on the data that defines this crisis. We're looking at recent research on something called Bitcoin security intensity. And crucially, we're going to explore a really elegant solution called non-arbitrary tokens, or non-nat.
Built on something called digital matter theory, or DMT.
Right. So to really understand the threat, we have to start with the numbers. The economic model with the halving every 4 years just isn't generating enough revenue to keep up with Bitcoin's valuation.
The security budget is shrinking relative to the very asset it's supposed to be protecting.
And this critical metric is called the Bitcoin security intensity, or BSI.
Exactly. You can think of BSI as the network's insurance premium. It's the proportion of Bitcoin's market cap that's actively defended by miner revenue. So that's the block subsidy plus the transaction fees.
And the data here is, well, it's pretty stark.
It's very stark. BSI dropped from a pretty healthy 3.9% back in 2014 all the way down to just 0.88% in 2025, right after this latest halving.
Let me just put that in context for you. Imagine your home is worth $1 million. In 2014, you're spending $39,000 a year on security. Feels robust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 2025, that budget has shrunk to under $9,000, but your house is still worth $1 million. The risk is just completely changed.
And it gets worse. The projections show BSI collapsing even further, down to a really precarious 0.21% by 2032 if nothing changes. The incentive system is just weakening exponentially.
Which makes the network a very tempting target.
A very tempting target for a well-resourced adversary.
Okay, so that brings us to how we actually, quantify this attack risk. The research introduces two things: the energy security ratio, ESR, and the attack opportunity index, or AOI.
To get the ESR, you look at the 2024 numbers. Bitcoin's annual energy use is about 186 terawatt hours.
Which sounds like a massive number on its own.
It is a massive number, but you compare it to the global electricity surplus, which is estimated at 3,856 terawatt hours.
Wow. Okay, so that's the available unused energy that could be, weaponized.
Exactly. So Bitcoin's current ESR is only about 4.8%. That's a very low barrier to entry for someone who wants to do a lot of damage.
I find that statistic so compelling. We all hear about the 186 TWH, and it's hard to grasp. But when you put it next to this ocean of over 3,800 TWH of surplus energy, suddenly it looks small.
It looks very small. And the consequence of that 4.8% is the attack opportunity index, the AOI, which is just 1 minus ESR.
So 95.2%.
95.2%. And this isn't some abstract number. It means that 95.2% of the world's available surplus energy could, in theory, be marshaled by a nation-state to launch a 51% attack.
So for anyone listening who isn't super technical, what does a successful 51% attack actually let someone do?
It's total domination of the network. You can rewrite history, which means you can double spend. You could reverse transactions you already sent, basically stealing money.
And censorship.
And crucially, censorship. You could block transactions from certain addresses or just mine empty blocks and grind the whole network to a halt. It breaks the fundamental promise of Bitcoin.
So the research suggests that for absolute security, Bitcoin's energy use would need to be more than 50% of that global surplus. That's over 1,900 TWH?
It's nearly a tenfold increase from where we are today, and that's the structural problem. The halving mechanism actively reduces the revenue miners need to buy the energy and hardware to even get there. The model is pushing them out, not scaling them up.
So the metrics show the threat is real and it's getting worse, which leads to a much darker question. If the decentralized incentives fail, who steps in to pay that enormous energy bill?
The source material is pretty clear on this. It suggests we'd see a strategic pivot where nation-states become the security backbone of the network.
Out of self-interest, not ideology.
Pure strategic self-interest. They'd see a global infrastructure of this size and realize they can't afford to let it fail or fall into the wrong hands.
And the analysis really zooms in on the United States' potential interest here. They have these huge structural debt problems, and Bitcoin could be seen as a tool to help manage that.
That's right. The idea, and this cites plans from things like the proposed Bitcoin Act, is for the U.S. to acquire a lot of BTC, maybe up to 1 million Bitcoin,
As a balance sheet asset.
as a parallel balance sheet asset. It hedges their debt without having to raise taxes or trigger massive inflation. It's a stabilizing force.
And then the second part is even more geopolitical, treating the act of mining itself as a strategic investment.
Absolutely. By getting into mining, the U.S. can reinforce the dollar's position. They prevent a rival state from using Bitcoin to get around them. If they can drive the U.S.-based hash rate high enough, they essentially absorb the security costs themselves to protect their own interests.
But that stability comes at a huge cost, doesn't it? A cost to Bitcoin's original ethos. If the U.S. ends up controlling, say, 30 or 40% of the hash rate by 2035,
They gain enforcement power.
they could censor transactions.
They could absolutely enforce compliance with domestic policy, with foreign policy.
Yeah.
It creates the ultimate trade-off. Do you want centralized stability or do you want decentralized vulnerability?
So you get sound money, maybe backed by a state, but you lose censorship resistance forever.
You shift from the decentralized timeline to the nation-state centralized timeline. That's the outcome if the economics aren't fixed from within.
Okay, so that's the problem defined. We need a sustainable, decentralized fix that doesn't require some massive, messy consensus change. And this is where digital matter theory, DMT, and this thing called a non-arbitrary token, NAT, comes into the picture.
DMT is the foundation. The idea is that Bitcoin's blockchain data is the most secure substrate in the world because it's backed by so much energy. It's thermodynamically secured.
So DMT treats this data like digital matter.
Exactly. Digital matter from which you can derive a digital commodity, like NAT, not just create one out of thin air.
And NAT is designed to be the first of these commodities. The whole goal is for it to act as a second subsidy for miners.
Right, so they get their normal BTC subsidy plus fees, plus the market value of the NAT tokens they derive from each block.
What makes it non-arbitrary, though? What makes it different?
It's the issuance mechanism. This is the critical part. NAT tokens are generated from the bits field in each Bitcoin block header. The bits field is what dictates the difficulty target.
Okay, wait, can you just unpack that a little? What is the bits field, and why does linking issuance to it matter so much?
Sure. Think of it this way. To find a block, a miner has to guess trillions of numbers until they find one, the block hash that's lower than the target number. The bits field is that target number encoded in the block header. It is the direct thermodynamic proof that the work was done.
So it's not arbitrary data.
It's the least arbitrary data on the entire chain. So by deriving NAT from that field, you're tying its existence directly to the physical labor already securing Bitcoin.
And that means the tokens are decoupled from Bitcoin's decay schedule. This is the crucial part.
This is the fix.
Bitcoin's price doesn't have to double every 4 years to keep the security budget intact. NAT lets miner revenue grow along with the network's importance.
It solves the game theory. There was a Princeton paper back in 2016 that highlighted this. Unlike gold or steel, where how much the producer makes isn't tied to the security of the gold.
Right.
Bitcoin's security is 100% proportional to miner revenue. If they earn less, the network is easier to attack. NAT provides that extra incentive to keep the cost of attack high.
I have to say, I'm a bit skeptical about adoption. That sounds like a massive change to coordinate across all the global mining pools. How does this fit with AAM's razor, the idea that the simplest solution wins?
It fits because it requires zero consensus layer change. That's the simplest part. Miners don't have to upgrade their nodes or change Bitcoin's code at all. They just opt into a new economic layer that uses data that's already there.
And the adoption is already happening.
It is. 60% of Bitcoin hash power has already engaged with NAT. And historically, when you hit that 60 to 70% threshold for something like SegWit or Taproot, it becomes inevitable.
And the solution isn't just about protecting Bitcoin, is it? It's about exporting that security to the wider crypto world, creating what the source calls the network effect.
Right. We've seen huge Chinese mining pools, F2 pool, Spider pool, via BTC, all adopt NAT. It's driven by a competitive flywheel.
Meaning if your competitors start earning this extra revenue.
You have to join in or you get outcompeted financially. You can't afford to ignore it and stay relevant.
Okay, so let's clarify how this broader ecosystem, the NAT wheel, works. If NAT is tied to the slow, secure Bitcoin chain, how does it power fast applications?
That's the engineering elegance of it. The DMT and TAP protocol, it's minimally invasive. It only uses Bitcoin's block data for authenticity. That's the anchor. But it offloads all the heavy work, the minting, the trading, the transfers to faster chains like Solana and Ethereum through an SDK.
So you avoid the high fees and congestion of trying to do all that on Bitcoin's base layer.
Exactly. You get Bitcoin security anchor, but the utility happens on faster, cheaper chains.
So how does the value flow back to the Bitcoin miners then?
Through a tariff mechanism. Any app built using DMT, whether it's a metaverse, a game, an AI service, whatever, it implements a tiny fee, maybe 0.05% to 0.25% on the transaction volume that's happening on those other chains.
And that tariff revenue is the engine of the flywheel.
Precisely. Looking at 2024 projections, even a tiny 0.05% tariff on the volume from these apps could generate billions. The source estimates $12.855 billion.
And that money goes where?
It's not pocketed. It's channeled directly into a buy and burn mechanism for NAT.
Which increases its scarcity and its value, which flows directly back to the miners who are deriving it.
And that is the long-term impact. The analysis projects that if NAT hits a $350 billion market cap, the value it generates for miners effectively matches the entire current Bitcoin block subsidy.
It doubles their revenue.
It doubles their total revenue. It permanently aligns Bitcoin's security with this growth. It creates a self-reinforcing cycle of trust and value and saves the network from that reward cliff.
So we've covered a huge amount of ground here. We've explored this monumental tension. Bitcoin's own design is pushing its security budget towards a cliff, making state-level censorship a very real possibility.
A high-probability event.
And yet at the same time, this non-arbitrary, almost discovered solution is emerging organically from inside the ecosystem. And it's gaining consensus without needing some huge, divisive code change.
And its strength really comes down to two simple ideas. First, AAM's Rather. It's the simplest solution because it demands no change to the core protocol. And second, something they call Elon's Razor.
Which is?
The most entertaining outcome is the most likely. And what's more entertaining than people getting rich by implementing a solution that makes the entire network safer for everyone.
And as we've discussed, NAT works by transforming what is otherwise wasted energy, like the 8 terawatt hours of wind and solar power that Texas reportedly just throws away every year, into a portable, secure asset. So if DMT does successfully scale NAT's value and secures Bitcoin for the long term, it raises a pretty provocative question for you to think about. If surplus terrestrial energy becomes the weapon of choice for a 51% attack, could the next competitive front for Bitcoin mining actually be the race to space, using infinite solar power and radiative cooling to achieve ultimate hash power dominance?